First, we'll have the call of the roll.
Peter Belo, Alan David, David Gurns,
Here.
Kathleen Gorman,
Here.
Julie Hammond,
Here.
John Hughes,
Here.
Michael Mascola,
Here.
Todd McCormick,
Here.
Phil Sherwood.
Here.
Excellent. And if our immediate chair could lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gurns. I'd like to welcome everyone to the board. I see a lot of new faces out there, and I'm very happy for that. And if the new members could introduce themselves, if we start with you, Phil, and the town that you're from.
Sure. Phil Sherwood from Atkinson.
Very well.
First meeting.
Mike, you're returning. Alan's returning. David, you're returning. Julie, you're returning. John, you're returning.
Todd McCormick, Danville.
And Kathy Gorman, Sandown.
Very well, and I'd like to thank the outgoing members, especially those who had served one-year terms at the appointment of their selectmen or their fellow committee members. Thank you very much. We'd had some openings early in the year last year, and it was great that those were filled. Everyone should have in front of them a binder with copies of RSAs, chapters 32, 33, 195, and committee bylaws. So with that said, we've previously done it in a white binder, it was a bound binder. It was just very unwieldy. We can't make any changes or anything to it. So you're getting a binder now that you can open and close and whatever you need in and out of that. So the first thing I'd like to do in terms of the elections, I am just here for the purpose of having you as a board will nominate and elect a chair. And as part of that process, I will call for nominations. I will ask the person being nominated if they accept. And if they do, there's no need for a second. When we have all nominations in, I'll call for a vote on each of the nominations. I'm sure everyone will vote just once, and see how we make out. So I'll call for any nominations from the floor for chair.
I nominate Mike Mascola.
You accept the nomination?
I do.
Are there any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate David Gurns.
You accept your nomination?
Yes.
Are there any other nominations? I'll call a vote then on the two candidates. First, to have a majority, if we all agree, we'll take the chair. There are 7 members here this evening, so it would take 4 to be a majority. So all those in favor of Mike Mascola, please raise your hand. Looks like we have a majority.
What are you doing, Dave?
Wait a minute, leave me out hanging to dry.
It is with such a great pleasure.
Now you know how I felt.
You don't hold it against me being the only no vote. I mean,
I will vacate the seat. Turn it over to you, sir. Thank you very much for that, yeah.
David will talk.
Can't forget that.
All right, so now we're moving to 5B, nominations for vice chair. So I'm going to accept nominations at this time for vice chair.
I'll nominate Mr. David Gurns.
Do you accept?
Yes.
Are there any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate Kathy Gorman.
Ms. Gorman, do you accept?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any additional nominations? So we have 2 nominations. I'll close the nominations. Still have 7 votes, so the 4 will take it. So I'm going to go in the order that they were nominated. Those in favor of David Gurns for vice chair, please raise your hand. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. And for Kathy Gorm, please raise your hands.
That was a majority.
Oh, yeah, just for the record, okay. So it's good.
Okay.
So congratulations, sir. My right wing.
Sure.
You stay right there.
Stay there.
All right. we have down to others. We don't have any others, do we? Or just for, no, we're gonna get that. So we have no others. Appointments, we have a recording secretary.
Current secretary is Katarina Curtin,
So do we have to nominate, or
if you'd like.
anybody for nominating Katarina?
I'll nominate.
We're all gonna nominate. Do you accept?
Yes.
Awesome. Any other nominations? No, all in favor? So that looks like it's unanimous. Welcome back.
Thank you.
And I don't believe we have any other appointments under that category.
Other than for two committees that we serve on, CIP and strategic plan.
Are we doing that in the other one? We can do that now. We can also do it when we pick up our other two members, unless we
That's
have a
fine.
strong. How does everybody feel about that? So what David's asking, we sit on the CIP and the strategic plan. And so we can find out if the two individuals who are missing would like to serve or vice versa. I don't think it's critical at this very minute, but
Yes.
how does the
And
board feel about
actually,
that?
that makes sense because question was raised to me of how often they meet and what days. And the school board is still trying to figure that out. So until they figure out who's gonna chair it and when they're gonna meet, it may be wise to wait.
Okay. If we're good with that, we'll put on, did you have?
No, I had asked when they met, because I think that would determine when people would be available or not, or if they were available, so that was my only question.
We're still gonna be getting other information too, who's our school board rep to this committee, the liaison, so we have time. So that will conclude the appointments. If I go to review and adoption of bylaws, I know some people here may have some comments, so I'm gonna throw out a suggestion. We can discuss the bylaws if you want tonight, which they're over here on the agenda. For people who maybe haven't had a chance to read it yet, doesn't mean we can't put it on the next meeting also. So we can take some discussion tonight, and we can discuss it at the next meeting. It doesn't have to be just once. This is our meeting. We can do what we want. So I'll take it at the will of the board. Does anybody have comments that they wanted to make?
I do, and I don't mind if we don't vote on anything tonight, but I did review them, so as people are going through them, it might just be food for thought. I don't know if anyone else went through them and had any comments. Did you? Or-
Minor, I have some minor comments, and then I'm gonna give this board a suggestion, but go ahead, keep going with yours.
Okay, so I just noticed in, section 1B, the last paragraph, it states that after the adjournment of the organizational meeting, they may reconvene in a special meeting
Can you
if
just
they
hold on
wish.
one second?
Oh, okay,
It's the green section.
yeah, green, that's where the colors
Oh,
come in.
I'm in last year's colors.
The-
All right, 1B.
Yes, it's the last paragraph, and the first statement says that we may reconvene after the organizational meeting in a special meeting if we wish to consider additional matters. However, if you go down to regular budget committee meetings, it's section 2, at the end of paragraph A, it states that the budget committee shall hold one meeting in March immediately following the organizational meeting. So that's redundant, so we would have to strike one or the other, because it can't be a special meeting and a regular meeting. So I would just suggest that we strike it from the first section, because it states that we need to have a regular meeting immediately following the organizational meeting under section 2. That is my first recommendation.
Right,
It's redundant, and we can't have it at special and a regular, in general.
We wouldn't have to make it a motion, or just.
yeah, before we do motions, let me just back, can you hold on one second? Phil, did you have a,
Well, I interpret it differently, this reading, but my sense was I was willing to entertain make a motion of tabling this to give a benefit for all of us to review it, so that when people are bringing up suggestions, it's not happening at first read for some folks. That being said, I'm not in the least trying to discourage people from having conversation.
Right.
But
So this would be my suggestion. Let's just hear the input,
That's all I was
right,
doing.
without taking any action. And then when we read it, we can then rethink, the comments that we've been receiving.
Also, just, I mean, the very last thing in the bylaws, I don't even think we could change it today unless you notify 14 days prior unless every single person is here, so.
Right.
I don't think we could even vote to change that if we wanted to.
Keep on going.
Okay. Just a question on the next page. So it's a section 2, paragraph C. The limit to 30 minutes, not that we're going to have a huge crowd here for public comment, but would we need to vote? Do you want to leave that and vote on it if there's more people that want to comment, or?
More people or change the amount of time?
Well, it says delegations and individuals, so public comment are limited to 30 minutes.
Right.
Unless overruled.
Oh,
Well, we say everyone can speak 5 minutes. If there's more than 6 people, which I highly doubt there ever will be in general, but you limit it
I
to
think what
30
we can
minutes.
do at the time is we can just ask the board
Okay.
if they're willing to have a majority to waive it.
Okay,
That's been the
okay,
the pattern in the last year, is particularly towards the end, when we had a lot of folks who wanted to comment about the end of the budget, and there was a lot of people who wanted to comment. We had to, we extended it, we just let it happen until people finished, and 5 minutes per person.
okay.
And
Then,
that was a vote by the committee.
okay, all right, great. So, ignore that one. The next question, I guess I had, it's on attendance, it's section 8. There are no provisions for attendance in RSA 32. In fact, we only have to have one meeting. So I would strike this completely because no elected official can be made to attend a meeting. They should, but there's no, there's no,
It's not
Provision.
discussed in 32?
no. I mean, please take a look. I've looked, and you can't be forced to attend a meeting.
yeah, you're not a typical employee per se.
Yeah. I mean, we should be notifying people, but we can't, this does not exist from what I've read, and I went through it. So, I would just consider removing that. And then my final comment, it's at the bottom of committees, section B. The superintendent cannot be an ex officio. He's not an elected officer. He doesn't hold office. He's an employee. I'm not saying the committee can't choose to have him on, but he's an employee. He's not an elected official. An ex officio is someone that holds office on another board or committee. So I would just strike that, and then the committees can do what they want with it, but I don't think
Bless you.
she's saying that.
Can I ask for clarification? When you say can't, do you mean to say shouldn't be, or you?
He's not an elected official, he's an employee. An ex officio is someone that's appointed by another committee or board to serve on a committee in their elected position.
Yeah, I would be interested in seeing that, if you can find that definition.
can
If
look
it
it up,
defining,
it's
yeah,
Webster's.
just in this, that'd be interesting to see,
Yep,
yeah.
I can send you all Webster's definition if you'd like. That's it,
Excellent.
that's all I had.
So this is what we'll do is, we received some input, and we'll just table it for our next meeting. Hopefully we have 2 more members to join us. We can have more of a discussion. The other part I'd like you to consider is, and I've always had some curiosity about the bylaws, meaning, are they just a guide, right? So, for instance, it talks about when we might have meetings, when we start the meetings, et cetera. And if we want to have more meetings or less meetings, we can just do it. And so, at some part of this, I look at it as a guide, you know, making to your point about attendance. You know, if the board wanted to go, you know, maybe pursue something, they did or they didn't, it was at their discretion. And now I bring it up to you that you're telling me it's not mentioned in 32.
Or at least remove the RSA.
Right.
Because,
But I'd like
There
the
isn't
board
any.
to have some flexibility instead of being so rigid against, I'm gonna look at them as like a guideline.
I mean, I think typically bylaws are kind of general.
Yeah.
Because it's silent in so many areas deliberately, because scenarios may come up that the
Okay.
board doesn't see, and that makes sense.
All right,
and I agree, they shouldn't be rigid, but they should be accurate with anything that we
I
do
agree.
put in the.
I agree. Okay,
Do what we say and say what we do.
I'll go with that. So if nobody else has any, does anybody else have any comments about the bylaws? All right, with that being said, we're going to table this for our next meeting with hopefully a full board.
When you
Can I
say
make
next
that motion
meeting,
to table, to make it official?
Pardon me?
the next meeting?
Not the one following this,
Right, because that's our next meeting.
April 12th.
April 12th meeting.
Yep.
Thanks, David. Yeah, it wouldn't be that quick.
Well, they could rise. and you could have-
All right, so that would take care of 7. I'll just ask if there's any other business. We're going to adjourn this meeting and then enter our regular budget meeting. No other business, so I'm going to adjourn this meeting at 7, without the glare, was it 7:20?
Just put that up, 7:20.
7:20. All right, this meeting's adjourned. And now,
Take a minute or two.
pardon me?
Take a minute or two, I think Mr. Stearns may have the
I'm leaving.
part.
Oh, okay.
Chip already.
Roll one more time.
Dean, are you up?
Yeah,
Okay. Peter Belo, Alan David, David Gerns, Kathleen Gorman,
Here.
Julie Hammond,
Here.
John Hughes,
Yeah.
Michael Mascola,
Here?
Todd McCormick,
Here.
Phil Sherwood.
Yeah.
Okay. Next is Pledge Allegiance, and I'm going to go and start the pledge again. There's always a good reason to pledge my flag. And I'll lead it off. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We just have a quorum.
Pardon me?
We just have just enough for a quorum.
We do, and doing our meeting minutes is going to be a challenge now because I'm going to guess there's going to be a few abstentions. So with that being said, I'm going to ask, I'm not even sure it's worth holding off because the only other one is Alan David, who was at these meetings to even partially comment on them, so.
David was in attendance, perhaps?
He was.
Yeah, yeah,
At the previous at the meeting minutes we're going to approve, he was there.
yeah, David wasn't.
But Peter wasn't. I'll tell you what we're gonna do. We're gonna go to approve them tonight. If they have additional comments, we can always make more changes to the meeting minutes. But at least we can get them out there approved for the board. So I am going to go start with the January 11, 2018 meeting. So does anybody have any comments on this one? You just give me a nod when you think you've had enough time or not enough time. Is everybody all set? Julie, you all set? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the January 11th?
I'll make a motion.
So Mr. Hughes makes a motion. Anybody for a second? Mrs. Hammond seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? So you've got 3. Abstentions? 1, 2, 3. So that'll take care of January 11th. But then we also have the January 11th, one we did after the meeting, so this would be the 9 PM. So January 11th, this is the BudCom meeting that took place afterwards at 9 PM, after our public hearing. Take a look at those. Anybody have any questions, comments? Motion?
Motion to accept the minutes?
Mr. Hughes with the motion,
I'll second it.
Mrs. Hammond with the second. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of accepting the January 11, 2018, 9 PM meeting minutes, raise your hands. You've got 3. Abstentions? We have 3 abstentions. That takes care of January 18th. I'm sorry, January 11th. Now we're off to January 18th. Take a look at these meeting minutes. I had to dig way back for this stuff. Okay. I'll entertain a motion if everybody is all set. If not, we'll keep on waiting until they're done. Do I have a motion to accept January 18th meeting minutes?
I'll make that motion.
How about a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. McCormick. Discussion? All those in favor? You have 3, and abstentions? You have 3 abstentions. That takes care of January 18th. We're now up to January 25th meeting minutes. Take a look at those. Would somebody like to make a motion for these meeting minutes?
I'll make a motion to accept the meeting minutes.
Okay, a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. McCormick. Any other discussion? All those in favor? We've got 3 in favor. Abstentions? and you have 3 abstentions. That takes care of Part A, January 25th. Now we're going to go to the January 25th, 9:31 PM meeting minutes. Take a look at those. This one should be a little bit quicker. Do I have a motion for these minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Get a motion and a second by Ms. Hammond. So John had the motion and Julie had the second. Any discussion? All those in favor? We've got 3 and abstentions. You have 3 abstentions. That concludes January 25th. We're now up to February 8th. Motion for these meeting minutes?
So made?
Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. McCormick seconds. Is there any other discussion? Or is there any discussion? None. All those in favor of the February 8th, 2018 meeting minutes? So you've got 3 and abstentions. You've got 3 more abstentions. So that's going to conclude catching up with the approval of our minutes. Next on our agenda is correspondence. Do we have any correspondence?
Correspondence is making its way around in the folder. Feel free to take a
Okay, so
look.
that's going around. So typically what we'll do with correspondence is we'll try and get them circulating in the beginning, so hopefully by the time we get up to correspondence, they're at least partial way through. Go ahead.
Is it possible that when correspondence comes in, it's circulated to the budget committee prior to the meeting so we can review it beforehand?
Yes, and so what I was going to bring up later in the meeting, but I'll actually bring it up now. So I want to make sure that Jeff, do you have everybody's emails?
Well, yes.
Okay,
However, we will confirm what we have on our record, and we'll confirm what's okay to post on the site. But we'll handle that later, so yes.
right. I don't know if you want to do a test email out to everybody, just to make sure. We just want to make sure that we don't start engaging in conversations through email. So when you get the stuff, if the stuff you have questions about or, discussion, just hold on to it, sit tight, and we'll address it at the meeting. So I'm going to pass this to you for right now.
Can those be posted on the website? If they're already electronic anyways?
I will look into,
The correspondence before we see them, you're saying? Into our documents on the website, or?
Yeah.
That it should be able to. I thought you were talking about like in the public section.
Yeah, either one. I mean, it's correspondence, it's public.
Okay.
It-
Kathy?
Yeah, I agree, it is public, but when I was on the committee previously, unless the correspondence comes in and is addressed directly to me and only me, I think if it goes to the committee as a group, that we had delegated that the chair would be the one that responds to that person only, it wouldn't be this big back and forth, because again, you want to be cautious about it turning into a meeting in email.
Right.
So I don't know if that has been carried on since I had left, or if we want to discuss
it did.
how that's, okay.
David would typically respond as our previous chair to specific emails if it needed something to be responded to. And then if it was just more like for information only, it came in our correspondence folder. But if we can see if we can get general correspondence that aren't really looking for feedback, if we can have them sent out to everybody ahead of time through email.
Okay, amazing.
So what about the process where only a partial list gets an email from somebody?
I mean, if they sent it to like maybe the representatives of one town,
Yeah. Is that?
that's not to the board.
Right.
I mean, if they sent you a private email,
Yeah.
that's one thing, but if they're addressing it, to BudCom, that's something different. Go ahead, Kathy.
I just suggest if that happens, that we then go to the chair and ask it to be put on the next agenda if it's something that they do want discussed, and we can't go into it via email. I think that the public's concerns should be addressed at this meeting.
Okay. I mean, last year, we didn't get, we weren't overwhelmed with correspondence.
That's what I'm thinking. I
Right.
don't think it's going to consume our meeting, so.
Okay. Well, we'll go on this path, and we'll just monitor as it goes, and if it needs an adjustment, we'll make an adjustment.
I just have a basic question about how it's been done in the past. I would imagine there may be scenarios in which there's correspondence, but because it's regarding potential pending litigation or a personnel issue, that it doesn't land in this folder, right? That there's portions of that correspondence that isn't deemed public. When that's the case, is this body notified that there's been a correspondence that isn't ending up in the folder? In other words,
Yeah,
if something's withheld, are we at least notified? And given a rationale, there's the correspondence, but because of X, Y, and Z,
I don't think we've even seen a scenario of that.
okay.
Have we?
I think that's school board
Yeah,
business.
I mean,
That
that's
would be
definitely sounds more
directed-
school board.
That should be directed to the school board.
Ours is more generic with
Yeah.
budgetary.
If
That makes
it-
sense.
To my
Yeah.
point, do you folks remember anything like that? Yeah.
No.
So,
I think if something came in like that to me, I would direct them to the school board. It's not in my purview to even
okay.
That makes
address
sense.
anything.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, this should be pretty simple. Like, if history repeats itself, correspondence is pretty light. Okay. Anybody else on correspondence? Are we good here? Okay. Delegations of individuals? Anybody out there? None? So I guess we don't have to worry about that 30-minute limit?
I know, we don't. I didn't think it would be an issue.
But next week, right? Okay, administrative report. Jeff?
Well, here we are into another, commencing another budget season, and as far as the administrative report goes, I would like to tie out with everyone, and I think like John and anyone who's been here is probably familiar enough with our site to make sure that you can get in and get what you need to and you know where things are. So we can get a lot more of a technical session afterwards if you'd like to do that, if you think it'd be helpful. So.
Yeah, I think there's some information that hasn't been uploaded, and I don't know if that's because of the issue with the treasurers. But we have some reports that are expense and vouchers.
I'll take a look at expense. I think it's been more.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Expense actually is a folder you have to log into
Right.
to see. So if anybody's not logging in, then you
That's a
can't-
technical, yeah.
Yeah, you're not seeing the expense folder, so.
Kathy?
Yeah, I was just gonna mention the financial reports are up through November of 17, and then there's nothing beyond that, so if we could
Yep.
have those
those
uploaded,
up
that'd
for
be
you, yeah.
great. And then my other question would be, they're in PDF. It would be really helpful if they could be in Excel.
Is there a problem with going in Excel?
I know Budget Sense is a Excel-based platform.
With PDF, I know what's out there.
That was going to be what I was going at, are you worried about stuff getting potentially manipulated?
And that's up to you. That's up to how much time the committee wants to spend.
So-
We've had issues before where there's been uncertainty, somebody's been presented, and you just have no idea what the source of it is, because it's,
So are you
I
looking at it,
think-
Kathy, so you can potentially organize or sort through the data and,
Search.
Search.
Anything. Yeah, if I'm looking for specific
I mean,
function numbers.
look at, so here's my thought on this one, is we got to trust our own 9 members here. I mean, I understand the point where if it goes out to the general public, you know, the numbers can get altered. But if a member on this board wants to dive into a certain area in the spreadsheet, that would really help. So, go ahead.
I could suggest that the financial reports that are posted to the public are PDF, but if we could maybe just have Excel that's uploaded to our folder that we have to log into.
Right.
Because, I mean, there's no easy way to look at this if we cannot sort and look through. I mean, going through a PDF, even marking it up, you almost have to have it on paper, writing, adding them. It's just, for budget committee, it's just ridiculous.
How big of a task is it to put the output into Excel?
Well, it's not pretty.
It's not simple?
It's not pretty. And
What does not pretty mean? Are we asking a lot of time from your end, or?
it's more formatting on the user end, on whoever's receiving it. And, you know, I've been here and we've dealt with those Excel sheets as they've come back, and there have been questions. But if you as a committee find,
Right.
maybe you can make the determination. If you're finding that there's no nexus, no correlation to what's out there and what's being asked, if we spend a lot of time trying to figure that out, you as a committee can maybe make a determination on that.
Okay.
I
ahead.
thought that we had some of that information, not this past budget season, the one before,
Yes.
put into Excel.
I don't know what was put into Excel.
We did have numbers in there, but they were not complete, as we found out when we had questions, when we came in and were questioning some things. So I don't know what that was, but we did we did have them put into Excel.
Were they not complete if they were in PDF or Excel, or were they just incomplete and the questions were warranted, though? That would be my thing. So for me, again, going through a PDF as a budget committee, looking at numbers, trying to make sure that everything adds up, doesn't make sense in a PDF.
Right, no, I think it was more, that we hadn't asked for all the information. So I think that they just gave us some information, but not complete information.
Lesson learned, though. See?
Can we see what they look like, Jeff, at least?
Yeah, sure.
You know, because I think what's happening is, people are getting the PDFs and they're doing their best to transfer that into an Excel, and I think you get even more errors.
That's where you do find the errors, because that's what I had to do my first almost 3 years on the budget committee. And you do make errors at that point, because nothing lines up when you convert a PDF to an Excel. And it's hours of time, and it's going back and checking, and honestly, I don't know who has that kind of time.
It was very early in my being here, and I was peripherally involved in viewing observing what that was, and I don't remember exactly what the situation was, but it looked like there was some manipulation of data. Maybe it was sorting, maybe it was aggregating. It's very nice to be able to have perhaps a simultaneous PDF to be able to say, well, I came up with this, but it relates to this particular number on page 3 of the PDF.
That would be fine. I think that's fine.
Yeah.
When
Because
we're
it-
looking at things and I think something's off, I should be double checking my source data, bottom line.
Well, and if you're making a reference here or a question with the committee, it's always good not to have a relative, but to have a very firm, you know, in that PDF, I looked at it this way, and I think this number might be off. I have a question on it. It's on page 3. It's, 1100, 112, whatever it is. Maybe that would help to
What
ease
is the program called again?
Infinite Visions.
And I'm sorry, Kathy, is there any way to maybe get a login username and password with a scaled down access?
Ooh.
Even read only?
I don't know that our auditors would even go for that. We've just got too much information out there that would require us to set up the system entirely differently. And the way that our employees log in, they don't typically go to that site. They log in through their credentials already as employees. Does that make sense?
Let me back up. So were you thinking of actually diving into this?
Yeah, so as you know, Jeff, I sell similar things in my career in the cloud, and certain organizations give scaled down access to people, based on what their role is within the organization. So, you can get reports if you're an executive and you're just looking for executive reports, and then you have other people that can access and
Like read
go around. But there's an audit trail, so, you know what I mean? There's no audit trail when it's in a spreadsheet if somebody changes something and then turns it around, but there's an audit trail within that program, I'm sure. So nobody would be able to change anything without you being able to say, well, why did you change that number? But just a thought, I don't know.
Is there any information, well, as a former employee of a city, right, and I worked in the mayor's office, I wasn't given access to this, let alone someone on a committee. So that doesn't mean it's right or wrong, but it is abnormal. But are there things potentially in that database that might not be public?
Yes.
I can't think, yeah, so I would worry a little bit about that, whether it be bidding processes, whether it be,
Let me put it this way. We haven't done this in the past. I'd like to try some new techniques in the budget process this year. Let's see how it goes without it. I mean, keep it in the back of your mind. If we think it's going to be something we need, we can keep going back to Jeff. I think right now we're crossing a delicate line. Kathy?
The one thing, I had suggested this before, because I did a lot of research on the financial platform, because this is not my area, I know numbers, but I didn't know anything about the financial platform. Would anybody be interested in just having a demo on how it works, or no? Just understanding what the outputs are, because I've talked to the technicians at the company just trying to find out, and that's when I was told it's an Excel-based platform, and Excel is a push of a button. Now, I do understand when it comes out, it's not a perfect Excel spreadsheet, but it is an Excel document. It helps you understand all the standard reports that come. When we're requesting information, we will be able to see that this is a very easy report, or this is going to have to be programmed, but typically it's programmed once and you never program it again. That's just how these systems work. I don't know if anyone's interested in actually knowing how we're getting our information.
So I'm going to give you my 2 cents on this one. Is jumping ahead, I'm hoping that this committee agrees on spending our time a little bit differently on doing our budget process. I want to remove certain things that we've done in the future. Me personally, I don't want to learn how to use this software. I want the output.
It's just showing what the outputs can be, because we just spent a lot of money doing an upgrade. It comes with standard reports. It's specifically for school districts. And I just know in the past, we've been told that's a lot of work. When I call the company, they say, no, that's a push of the button. It's a standard report. It comes with the software. So just understanding when we are taxing someone versus when it's an easy request. Because we don't know, because we don't understand the platform. So it's just, what are the general outputs? What can we get? What comes with it? What's already programmed? I just think when someone says it's too much work and we all say, oh, okay, and then the company says, oh, no, that's standard. It's a little frustrating when nobody even
So
understands.
if we have a short overview or some type of brief overview as a committee of how this platform works, I'm going to question myself. It's a rhetorical question. Are we going to be enough of an expert to say to Jeff, this is an easy request, when he says, no, it's not? I mean, what's it going to get us? If it's easy, I'm hoping we just get it.
I think the data that we need is easy. That's my bottom line. I think what we will need as a committee to do our job, to generate a budget, is easy data to get out of this type of financial platform.
So I'm going to go back to last budget season, and so correct me if I'm wrong, John and Julie. Pretty much anything we requested, we got. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I don't think we
Yes.
went out of the norm of what we've gotten in the past.
Now, I mean, newer members might be asking for something different, and so it could be a bigger request on Jeff. we can try it. I mean, if you have a request, put it in. If Jeff starts telling you this is going to be very taxing, we can go from there.
Okay.
What
No,
is this
that's
committee?
fine.
I mean, I'll start, Phil. What do you think of, I'm just gonna go around quickly. Your comments on some kind of training to understand a little bit more about this software platform.
I understand wholeheartedly where Kathleen's coming from, but I'm going to assume best intentions from Jeff and others, staff here. When they say something's taxing, I'm going to take them at their word. At the same time, being a new person, I'm kind of interested, what kind of reports are we capable of getting?
Okay.
And that's something I think that Jeff could, and others, more experienced people could provide without this formal training.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Let's go. Kathy, I think I already know your stance. Todd, what's your view on this?
I don't want formal training. I just want
No. Right, but even if it's a brief one, yeah.
I don't want to be.
Todd, you good?
So, just a suggestion, I don't know if you've gone on the website or not, I know my company offers standard demos, you can either find them on YouTube even, on how our software works. I'm sure this company does the same thing. You could even find other users from organizations that are using this, who've gone to the trouble of making an actual demo and show you how it works. So that's just a thought. I mean, personally, they probably are a competitor of my company, so of course I'd be interested in seeing how it works. But I'm like Phil, I'd be interested in knowing what the full breadth of capability is for reporting. And as to the spreadsheets, it might look dirty, but I'd be interested in
Okay.
if we could have some access to, take a look at what we can do in there. I'd be interested in that.
And then Julie, and then John, I'll just ask for your input.
Same thing. I mean,
Okay.
I have no problem looking at any software. I'm always interested in it, but knowing what we can get out of it for reports is really the biggest thing.
Okay.
You don't actually need to see it if we had a list of what type of reports even, or examples.
Julie?
Yeah, I'm basically the same. I mean, I'd be open to learning stuff, but
Then why don't we do this? Jeff, could you try and get some information for us for the April 12th meeting regarding, what kind of options would be available for us to dig a little bit deeper and understand more about this software platform? That sound fair?
Yes, thank you.
Even just the type of reports that are routine. And I think that could be really helpful.
Perfect. So that pretty much, we're still under administrative reports. Jeff, do you have anything else? No? All right.
No, you do have the results, the election results as well. I don't know if that's a little further down. Okay, yeah,
Further down.
yeah. You'll be reviewing that a
Okay.
little further down.
Reports of the committees. I don't think there's going to be any reports, but I'll ask. None? None yet. Our school board rep, I don't believe has been assigned yet.
No.
So, unfinished business. I'll tell you, I don't know if I can put it here or I'll just throw it out on other, no, I'll pass, I'll put it up for later. No unfinished business. New business? Oh, Kathy.
Well, no, I have a question about the meeting minutes. I don't know where that would fall on here.
4.
So are the meeting minutes that were reviewed tonight not posted, or are they posted?
They'll be posted once they're approved.
So my question is, and I understand we meet every other week, basically. Meeting minutes, draft or otherwise, are supposed to be posted within 5 business days of the meeting. I know that the way the town does it is they post the meeting minutes. Any changes to those minutes are in the next meetings at the beginning of the meeting minutes. But whether we post them as draft or post them as final, they should be posted within 5 business days according to RSA 91A. I mean, it's very clear. I don't think there's any interpretation, how you can interpret that. So will we be doing that moving forward? Because again, I think coming to the meeting with your comments on any changes, if any at all, would be more efficient.
I agree.
Yeah, typically you've had them before the meeting as part of the agenda packet.
But you're still saying, are they
But
posted for public?
They're required to be posted for public view. Even if we watermark them draft,
Right.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah. We had been doing that during, I believe, the last half and the year before that in draft form.
So I'm gonna take that as a yes, so we'll just continue doing
Okay,
this
great.
request, so. So we're down to new business. Kathy had that one. Review of election results. Everybody should have a copy of the March 13th election results. Anybody have any questions, comments? I'll start with mine, see if this goes anywhere, but it was a pretty overwhelming statement from the community of how they voted. It wasn't like a 49-51. It was a pretty loud message, so this is what I've always felt and believed sitting on any committee is it's not really how I believe I want it to go for my household. I represent the people of my town. So when I look at this map, you know, these results, the people in the towns are speaking in a certain direction. So I just ask you folks to keep that in mind. I mean, there's nothing better than looking at voting results to figure out what the community's looking for. Anybody else have any questions about or comments about the voting results? Kathy?
I just want to, first of all, agree with you, and I have had a lot of feedback from, my constituents in Sandown, and we can probably address this when we go through the budget process, but I do think that they're counting on us on generating a budget this year and not just getting a number and saying, do something with it. I think they want to know that the budget that we build, that those monies that are allocated are necessary. So I'm hoping when we review the process, we can maybe scratch below the surface.
Anybody else? Okay. Moving on to the next one, 10B, SAU District Overview. It's under your territory, Joe.
Yes. So every year George would do his presentation, and I have modified it just a bit. Oh. Actually, now I'm too close. Turn left as well. There we are. So a little bit about the SAU in our district, and as you know, Timberlane is part of the SAU's School Administrative Unit number 55. SAU itself has its own tax ID number. It's separate from the two school districts which constitute SAU 55. The administrative unit itself is a 14-member board made up of Hampstead School District, again, its own entity, in the Timberlane Regional School District, its own entity. The Timberlane Regional School District is comprised, of 4 towns, has a 9-member board, and the Timberlane Regional, Hampstead School Board has a 5-member board. A little bit about both districts. The Hampstead School District is from pre-K to 12, about 1,300 students, a little less than that, about 1,264, I believe, as of end of year last year. They have 2 schools, 2 buildings, and high school students are tuitioned to Pinkerton Academy. Timberlane is pre-K to 12, approximately 3,500 students, 7 schools, 9 buildings, including the one that we're in right now. SAU 55 is located at 30 Greener Road in this building, has about 13 and a half administrative employees, leases half of the 30 Greener Road building from Timberlane Regional School District, and receives facility and computer services purchased from the Timberlane Regional School District. In the building, there are other employees, there are Timberlane employees as well. We have SAU itself. We have Timberlane Special Education and Student Services Departments, which are those doors that you pass right when you walk in. The Timberlane Curriculum Department, which is upstairs, and the Timberlane Technology Administration, which is on the other side of the doors as you walk in. The staff here in the building for SAU, superintendent, assistant superintendent, business administrator, myself, and the business operations coordinator. We have a human resources director, transportation coordinator, an admin assistant and a half-time receptionist, as well as 6 support staff, and those staffs support human resources, payroll, accounts payable, purchasing, federal funds, free and reduced lunch applications, and those are approximately 35-hour-a-week employees each. A little bit on the statistics of what comes through this building, what comes through my department in particular. In terms of W-2s, you can see for SAU we're at about 18, Hampstead almost 300, and Timberlane over 1,000. Purchase orders, 53 for SAU, almost 1,300 for Hampstead, and Timberlane itself is over 4,200. Of those, SAU's 53, purchase orders consist of about 71 lines, Hampstead's 1,300 consist of about 2,000 lines, and Timberlane's 4,200 consist of about 8,800 lines. And you can see the purchasing in each of the, or the budgets in each of the separate units, the SAU itself, Hampstead and Timberlane with the SAU at about 2 million, Hampstead 26.7, and Timberlane at 71.87. So SAUs are a strange concept, and a few examples of that, we can just look around us and you can see, for example, SAU 57, Salem, SAU 17, it's the Sanborn Regional, which is Kingston, Newton. SAU 21 and SAU 90 are the most novel in the state because they're in Hampton. SAU 21 supports Hampton Falls, Northampton, Seabrook, Southampton, and the Winnicott High School, located in Hampton. The Hampton School District has its own SAU, SAU 90, also located in Hampton. So it's a very strange mix as to how these are set up and what levels of support each SAU can provide, and that really is up to the constituent districts within the SAU as to what level of support they're looking for, what they'll benefit from. SAU 16, Brentwood, East Kingston, Exeter Regional Co-op, Middle and High School, Exeter, Kensington, Newfield, and Stratham. So everyone is different, and we are made up of our member districts and towns. How is the SAU funded? So the costs are allocated among the 2 districts, approximately 50% based on the number of students and 50% based on equalized valuation. So when you look at how those 2 play into the total assessment, the total percentages, breaks down to about 23.55 for Hampstead School District and about 76.45 for the Timberlane School District. A lot of people ask, and people get very upset, why, particularly as of late, why have costs increased for SAU 55? This is a big question, right? And you're all going to find out the answer, and this is one that David Gurns just really had a hard time. What do you guys do? Why is the budget increasing? What is this all about? One of the things that we've been trying to do much more proactively over the last number of years is to make sure that where we have shared costs, that those shared costs are included to the extent that they can be in the SAU, so that they're allocated appropriately. And we have a courier that will visit all of the schools. It's better that that's paid out of SAU so that we know that that's being allocated according to our respective percentages. And when you think about it as a general proposition, and you look at the numbers that we looked at previously with the number of buildings and the number of students, the percentages usually work out to be approximately on point. So it's probably a 75, 25, 76, 24% split either way. But we've seen more costs go into SAU out of the districts, and with the idea that they're better allocated. I will be frank, and I hope no one from Timberlane is listening, or from Hampstead is listening, but Timberlane has probably been a beneficiary of this, and that we want to make sure that Timberlane is getting reimbursed for anything that was allocated from Hampstead, its fair share of whatever it's contributing, or whatever goes through it. So you've seen things come out of Timberlane and go into SAU as of late, and that's one of the reasons that our costs have increased. We're trying to make sure that we get that allocation down correctly. What are some of the benefits? Well, we have economies of scale in terms of administrative support, academic support, technical support. And this was something that, this is just hot in the past couple months that this came up. Never really fully appreciated it before, but an example, our regional transportation cost savings from that 2018, from the current RFP that we just put out, for the two districts to go with the same company together, $230,000 over 5 years for Hampstead, $395,000 over 5 years for Hampstead. For Timberlane, $347,000 over 3 years, $595,000 over 5 years. So that's just one example where the economies really, really work. Well, why is that? Well, because of the fact that our 29 buses take up the same amount of overhead as 29 buses, or 29 buses plus Hampstead's 9. No more overhead at the bus yard. So that overhead's being allocated over 38 buses and not 29, and it adds up. And I'm very, very happy that we're able to articulate those savings. When you think about it, it really makes sense. So,
Is this the first year that that's happened like that, or this goes back?
well, we've never been able to articulate it to such a degree as we have been this year, and it was just very, very obvious and very apparent. We run other programs like food service, and Hampstead's always had a food service director, and Timberlane's always had a food service director. They chose to break off and split and do their own thing, and Hampstead has its own vendor, and we have Whitson's. And that's worked out fine for each district. I don't know that there's a huge, vast cost savings, but transportation alone, having it all come out of one yard, economically, it's something that I can point right to and say that's a significant cost savings. And we also benefit from the fact that having so many resources together, where we have a bus out of service, or we have an extra one for Hampstead, we've been able to have some flexibility there, and it's always helpful to have those additional numbers of those economies of scale. I don't know if anyone's had a Hampstead bus pick your kids up. We've had, Timberlane has picked up in Hampstead for a student, bus may pick up in Hampstead. It's just nice to have the pool to be able to float, and 38's a lot bigger of a pool than 29 or 9 on their own. So I don't know if that's helpful. Everyone says, well, what do they do in the SAU? They're going to, you know what, but practically speaking, the economies of scale have been very, very obvious this year, most obvious this year. And it's been shocking, but when you look at that overhead, it's nice to be able to split that.
Jeff, I just had a quick question. Based on the way it's divided up, and you estimated that, Hampstead has about, 26 or 27%, and where the remainder?
Mm-hmm.
How come the the member board wouldn't be reflective of that same equal percentage?
ratio?
That ratio.
They have a couple different ways they could vote. I believe that's one of the, I believe that they do have like a weighted vote average.
Yeah, because they've got a heavier weight than,
On a strict voting on a strict per vote perspective. But there are other voting mechanisms. There are such things as weighted voting
oh, okay.
that they could participate in that would,
So that say it was something for Timberlane, their votes are weighted higher than the other members from Hampstead?
as a block. I mean, they would have the higher percentage than what you may see right now for the 5-9 split.
Right, it's a 5-9 split, which isn't exactly coinciding with those percentages.
It would be 3.5 members to be the 25%.
Right.
Is that
Or
what
say
you're saying?
4, or say 4, right now they're 5.
Right.
Versus 9.
Well, that's their school board is 5, that's how they made up at their school board level. Certain increments for school board, how many can be on it. So we have 9 and they have 5. We can't change how many are on their school board.
But they could appoint people to the SAU board.
But this is the SAU
Yeah.
board,
Yeah.
not the school board.
Well,
It's
it's
a different
comprised.
board.
I know, it's just how, it's comprised of the 2 school boards.
Okay,
But yes, they could have,
just wondering.
if they decided to.
Kathy, did you have a comment?
No.
Jeff, do you have anything else for your district overview before you jump into your budget process overview?
I don't think so. I hope no one's upset that George had this down, as far as I could tell. You probably heard the same thing
I've heard this a few
years,
times.
every year. Mine's a little bit different this year. His
Okay,
was
good.
almost automatic, so I hope you get a
Shaking
little
it
more
up
out of
for
it,
me.
so. All right, now, shock of all shocks, when I was setting things up, I just said to myself, oh, I can't believe this, because we're so far off. But when we're looking and getting things set up, we're working on the 1920 fiscal budget. It's unbelievable. The 18-19 season is the 1920 fiscal budget, so. A little bit about budget preparation and what happens on our end. My office there's a certain seasonality to it and a certain rhythm, if you will, and in the district is very, very similar. In fact, David Grins had mentioned CIP, and this is around the time of the year that CIP would be in reconvening to do its evaluation and look and do whatever it needs to do to get its numbers ready. Similarly, we as a district have a certain rhythm. We talked about Infinite Visions a little earlier. It used to be known as Budget Sense, for those who've been around for a while. It's an integrated financial system comprised of HR, payroll, remote requisition, accounts payable, general ledger, budgeting, and fixed assets. You had asked about access to the system, and it's really an enterprise system. So could there be something in there that you could get to? There are a lot of systems that are interconnected. There's a lot of information that's interconnected. And that's why the information, that's put out has to be very, very certain, because we could run in, we just have a lot of data intertwined, and it's a very efficient system in that regard for what we need. So our account number format, you'll see this throughout any of the reports probably that you're looking at. You'll see the first three numbers are the fund, and the fund is typically the 100, general fund, 210 food service, 220 federal revenues, and 500, you have the Performing Arts Center, and Mike, I know that you're having a hard time. Oh, it is up in the back there.
No, I'm reading it right here.
All right, good. We have a solution for that, but, and so that's the leadoff number. Typically what we're gonna be dealing with is Fund 100. It breaks down to function and object after that, and so those are the next 7 digits, and the function speaks to typically what the program is. Is it regular education? Is it special education? The object, what is it? Is it a salary? Is it an information access fee? We further go down to department, which is a 2-digit code, location, 2-digit code, level, a 1-digit code, and project, which is the last 5-digit code if that's being used. Typically, projects aren't used for everything. You don't find them in every number breakdown. So by way of example, middle school math textbooks at the bottom would be Fund 100, the general fund, 1100, which would be general education, regular education, 640 for textbooks, 40, and then the next two, 50 and 2, speak to the department, the location, and the level that we'd recognize that at. School board miscellaneous expense, Fund 100, 2319 is that school board account. 890 would be the miscellaneous account designation. Department 1, location 33, and level 4. And then you can see the regular ed textbook at a summary level, at a high level. That would pick up, if you were to summarize this would pick up perhaps everything in the textbooks line. Regular ed textbooks lines. It would pick up middle, it would pick up elementary, it would pick up high school. If they have anything that rolls up under 100, 1100, 640.
Because it's filled with 00 after that.
Conceivably, that's what normally would happen. Get that at a higher level. There are some resources out there. New Hampshire Financial Accounting Handbooks for local education agencies. There are, I'll go on to the Department of Ed website. We have some links out there. These are typically available on our website as well. The Department of Education itself produces, which I'm sure you've seen, some robust data, which we report to them through various means, and they in turn look at, sanitize, post. They're looking to collect more data as we speak, which is interesting. I'm very curious how it's going to correlate to what it is that they're able to produce. So our numbers are out there, and in terms of enrollments and cost per student, and you can see other districts as well. So, as I was saying earlier, when we get into a cycle, in the budget process for Timberlane, we're gonna be kicking off the CIP at some point in the near future. We have a lot of different methods and a lot of different things that we look to. We have our financial system, we have some system-generated budget numbers, such as labor, payroll. We have school input, which is the input from our local principals and program directors. District input from the higher level directors, curriculum directors, facilities. We have an administrative review stage as well as a BudCom review stage. So by the time things are getting to this committee, you can see the path that they've gone through. When they get to this committee, you will then hear where the different roles are. You'll get school input, you'll get district input as to what the drivers are, what the priorities are in that regard.
You all set?
I am.
Kathy?
So with the budget process, where is the school board? Because typically the governing body, because they are so closely associated with the not day-to-day, like the SAU would be, but they're meeting and having these updates. Typically, again, just at the town level, it goes before the Board of Selectmen. They'll make their recommendation, and then we have everybody's input at that point. There's no going back and forth. It's the budget's before us, we make our decision, then we move on to the next budget. So I was just wondering where does the school board recommendation come in? Not that we necessarily need it, but it's really, really good to have.
I agree.
So I think in the past, we picked it up from the school board liaison to the budget committee.
But typically I won't say the school board, so again, I have 6 years on the town budget committee, and the selectmen, so the budget comes before the selectmen. It's a request at that point. It's monies that we're saying, that, the town is saying, a department is saying that they need. We'll look at a trend, the selectmen make a recommendation, either they approve it, they can increase it, they can decrease it. Then when it comes to the budget committee, you can see the request, you can see the recommendation of the governing body, and then we can decide what we want to do, and then what we say is what actually rolls up that will create that bottom line for the voters. So I'm just not seeing, I don't think a liaison can be.
Right, so I think at this point, this is a conversation we should almost have jointly with the school board, because I don't believe they're doing that in the beginning process. I mean, I don't think they're looking right now at the, 2020 budget, making those changes that you just described, handing it to us with, that's what's requested, these are the suggestions, changes, and then hand it to us. It's not there, so.
No, and I don't expect anyone to be looking at budgets yet. This would be September. We would start doing this, because they have to get through this year, then they have to generate. But again, just based on RSA 32, I mean, we would, if we were asking for input from the governing body, they're required to give it to us. So I'm just wondering, again, people are concerned about the budget and how we generate it. It would be nice if we were a little transparent. I just think the towns do a very good job. The way they flow it through, it goes to the selectmen, they make their recommendations on that department, so however many departments they're able to get through within that meeting, and then it comes to us. And that's not the end of it. We then can go through it. Anyone can come back at any time if there's new information, but at least we have that budget done. And then there's usually one final meeting where we go through every single one, but at that point, there should be very limited changes, and then that is your bottom line. That's your budget.
So here's what I can do, is I can reach out to Sue Sherman, who's the chairperson of the school board right now, and ask her if this budget season, we can try and work in a closer harmony in that sense. So that means, if you're saying more in the September timeframe, she's got plenty of time to work with her board to start going in the same direction. And I agree with you, because there could be nothing worse that if the budget committee is looking to go in this direction and the school board's looking to go over here, we're almost out of sync.
Maybe an extra bullet point right
Yeah,
there
yeah.
between district and admin.
Yep. Because the way I see the liaison, and they're very important to this board, is when we're looking at the school board's recommendation and we have a question on why they made that recommendation, that's the job of the liaison, is to tell us why, and in defense of why they increased it or decreased it. So, and again, that it just seems to flow a little bit better.
So I think this is going to be a very high level. So I'm agreeing with you, but I don't envision, from watching the school board historically, they don't spend as much time on the numbers, reviewing the numbers. They're working on some other topics. So I think it's going to be a very high level. But let me see. I'll have a discussion with Sue.
Well, we're not required to have their recommendation, but
Yeah,
it's,
but it's
it's
good input.
nice. It's
It is.
good to have.
John?
So, on my first year, when George was still here, I remember sitting here and going through the budget we were given and marking up things. One thing that stood out, there was a mistake that the school board's stipend had been doubled in the budget. So, I was ready to make a motion to change that or figure out why it was doubled, and it had already been before the school board, and they had made cuts and changes. So they had already reviewed it, made changes to correct that.
Mhm.
I believe that was the school board that made those changes, and there were several other things, it wasn't,
No, that was an oversight.
okay, but I thought things had been changed, so that wasn't the school board that had made those changes. then.
Absolutely not.
That was at the SAU level.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
Okay,
That was more of a function of how that rolled up into
all right,
current year, and they may have been added incidentally. Some things we can roll forward, and other things we,
okay,
Well,
because for
we
some
can do
reason
it.
I thought that first year that they had already reviewed it, but.
rather sneaky of them if they were to do that, but.
No, I wasn't sure if it had been presented, and again, George was here, so I didn't know if if he was doing things a little different at
Yeah.
that point.
Um,
But I agree, that's how we do it in Danville at the town level, the department heads go before the selectmen, and they review it, and then they recommend it being passed on, or recommend changes at that point before it's moved on to
Okay.
the budget committee.
Yeah, I think it works really well. I don't know if you know how Plastow, Atkinson does their budget at the town level, but again, it works well. And again, and this isn't the end all. Until we move it forward to deliberative, we can make changes to any of the line items if somebody comes in with new information. But again, it's building it from the bottom up. It's not taking a number and saying, let's cut that. I just don't think we should do that. We know about where we're gonna land because we know the previous year's budget, but we should really be generating the budget without having a number in mind. And then if it's not palatable, we go through the departments again. If it's something we like, we just send it forward.
Okay, so while we're on the topic of budget process overview, I would like to talk a little bit about, and I think it was on here, so how we started off in September, historically, is we would do facility tours. We would typically spend about 3 different meeting nights going to our facilities. So if we have around 9 buildings, we'd hit about 2 or 3 a night. For 3 different meetings. It was good to see the facilities, but now I'm going to give you the bad part. For a 9-member board, we had a rather low attendance from BudCom members on these facility tours. So, if we had 2 or maybe 3 people on a facility tour, we gave up that night as a board in September. Basically, it's, I'll say September and half of October. We gave up that night to go on a facility tour, and the majority of the members weren't there. So I think it's a good process to go through, but we're not using it efficiently. So I'm throwing out to the board, if you want to continue on with the facility tour, so it's a learning experience, you get to go to a school that's typically not in your district. So I'm Plasto, I don't normally see the other district schools. It's a good way to get refreshed of what's going on up there. If the board feels that, look, we're gonna get, pretty much 9 out of 9 people there for every tour, I say go for it. But if we're not, I think we should be cautious of how we use our time. John?
Does it have to be on our meeting night? Do we have to give up a meeting to have a facility tour? Can
So
it
this
be-
goes back to our bylaws. We can make more meetings.
Well, it's not just us that are on those facility tours.
Correct.
So,
Right.
there's public attends those, school board members and BudCom, so.
So, Kathy, let me just go on one more. So that's a great point. When I said there is only, there's a low attendance of BudCom, yes, there might be school board members there might be other administrators. But here's the other caveat to this. You're coming off the end of summer. You go to the first facility tour. The presenter, so if Tom Geary's giving walking through the school and he's telling you, he's our facilities director, and he's telling you what's going on, there's got to be at least several conversations going like, hey, how are the kids? What camp did they go to? And, I got a new car. And nobody's listening to the presenter. If we're going to go do this, I would really encourage this board to, everybody that goes through there, focus on the person that's giving the talk. Give him some respect, because it's been a very poor display of information exchange. It's been more than poor, it's been horrible.
And those are late nights, so the administrators of those schools, especially the last one you visit, are staying late. We're sometimes traveling from one town to the next.
Right.
And they're waiting for us, and some of these tours can go long, because you've got a large school.
Kathy?
I would say that if they are scheduled, they're not during our regular scheduled meetings, because I'm just adding them up, the ones that we're required to hold.
We don't have a lot.
We have 9
Right.
total to look at budgets, and we have 7 buildings to go through. It's a lot. It's almost like you're focusing on almost a building, a meeting, if we go to that level, which I'm going to suggest that we look at the building level and let it roll up to what it is. I trust that when the department heads come in and let us know what's going on with their school, I've never been on, I've been in the different departments at the town level, but I've never been on a tour. And I haven't doubted the department heads when they come before us and ask for, make a request and have the supporting documentation. I don't think we necessarily need the tour to understand what they would need for a budget.
So I'm going to ask for the newer members. Do you think the facility tours would be beneficial for you?
I would say absolutely. But I would agree with Kathleen that I would want to do it outside the meeting. So a normally scheduled meeting, I would say. So if it is sort of typical, like low turnout, at least it's not making this body less productive
Okay.
in a normally scheduled meeting.
Perfect.
I completely agree. I find value in them. I would attend, but I would also rather have it outside of our normal meetings.
So Jeff, that's what we're going to try and do. I think it's a great move. We'll just pick facility tours on a non-scheduled night for our meeting.
And maybe coffee and donuts might increase attendance.
By default, I just.
Trying to think outside the box.
That'll be default. Coffee and donuts. I know these fancy ones.
And so what we did last year was we did our facility tours for 3 of our meeting nights. And then typically the next 3 meeting nights, we started getting department heads coming in, principals coming in, not department heads, principals coming in from each building, and they were presenting their request to us. And so that was valuable. I think as a guide, we should give them this year. So last year, it was just, tell us what you want. So some building principals came in with a very modest increase, and some came in, I'll just say, in a much bigger increase. And it's got to be, where does this board think we want to go? We don't want to sit here if somebody's looking at a 25% increase and saying, I can't sell that to my voters in the town. So I think we should, to be fair to them, say, listen, give us your stuff, and let's try and keep it in a range, right? You know, more than we're gonna accept, but then we can start working with the numbers. But I think the range that we took last year was large, and so if we have to start making cuts, this is my comment, I don't know if I should be cutting, you know, pencils, crayons, markers, or pens. I mean, I'm not in the school, I don't know this information. So it's better for them to present a more realistic number, so. Kathy, you had something?
I do, sorry. I have
It's all about
So what I would like to see when the principals do come before us is to see the building budget, their school budget, because it's really much larger than maybe the minor increases that they're asking for. It may be a little bit more than the prior year, but I think what matters is what does that school need, and that's where those monies are going. So when they come before us and say, I just need, you know, I don't know, $25,000 more than I asked for last year, which was $150, and then you see the school budget is $1.2 million. It's a huge difference, and you can't put it into a context on how that is going to affect the larger budget. So because you can also see trends for the school. They should be, you know, and again, I go back to the town, you have 3 years of expenses, and then what was allocated for the current year and what they're asking for. So you can kind of see what the spend has been, what they got, and then what they need for the next year. And you can make a pretty educated decision what they need and what they've been spending. So the way they present it's on a piece of paper, you can't put it into a lot of context.
We get a budget sheet along with that summary that has the trends on it, right, Jeff?
Mhm.
So we do get, well, they present their summary of their increases and decreases, major ones, but we also get a spreadsheet of all of their budget,
At the building level?
right? I mean.
At the location?
Is there a-
So we get Sandown Central, when they come in asking, oh, let's just say Sandown North, since Sandown Central's a little split now. Sandown North shows us they show us their building budget.
What do you mean by building budget?
The location budget for Sandown North, what Sandown
No.
North costs us.
No, I think what we got was a punch list with the requests that they were looking for, those items. And was it, you know, where was that line last year and what they're looking for this year? Not for everything in the school, for the items, the major factors that were going to increase or decrease, those are the ones we saw.
The cost drivers.
We had cost drivers, but you also did have what was being spent out of the building, if they thought they needed new books, or if they were looking to curtail a program, or if they had a capital request that they needed, you know, X, Y, or Z. That was all in that report, and I think Sean O'Neill had even asked if I could extend that out to actually see a further trend, and I was able to do that, I think, like 2 years back, to see where their spending had been, you know, then compared to budget, and so on and so forth, where they're looking for field trip money, where they're looking for all of the.
Wouldn't it be, so I get it, and that's good. I think for me, it would be good to see the entire building, the entire location, what the prior year's budget was expended, because for the years that have been expended, because that's the true amount that they had needed. And then when they are making their request, you have a % increase or decrease. You really only have to focus on a few line items. If it's about the same, you're not going to bother with a lot of the budget. But then you see, this is the bottom line of that school that's rolling up into that larger
Budget.
cost, yes.
Phil?
For point of clarification, this happens in September, what you're referring
Yes,
to?
yes.
Okay. And that's when the district, or that's when the schools begin to get together their priorities and so forth in anticipation of this process, right?
Yes.
So I see the value of visiting the schools around the time when we're beginning to roll up our sleeves and look at the budget. I wonder how folks feel about visiting the schools before September,
I was thinking the same thing.
quite frankly. And I understand there might be additional things brought up in September that weren't on our radar, say, in June. Nonetheless, I feel like there's valuable seeing the school at the end of the year before it was cleaned up, seeing it in its real condition at the end of the year when the supplies were either low or they had a surplus, or just whatnot. Plus, frankly, our plates are a little more empty in June than maybe they would be in September and October. I don't know what the tradition is. There might be good rationale behind it, but
It's not the tradition, but I've been hearing from numerous people to go down that path.
yeah, okay.
Because, I mean, September is kind of go time, right?
It is.
So,
It is, yeah.
I'd like to see the facilities before that, and I don't want to get in the administrator's way, too, at the same time when the school's back in session. And
So, some perspective on that, we've had the benefit going out in September to be able to say, hey, this is what was approved in last year's budget, and this was the summer work that we did, and here's how it's been implemented, just so you can see that whole cycle, how it's been implemented. And then, I think the other thing is, it came up maybe a little bit later last year, but it made a lot more sense. Recall the Pollard, the chairs that they were looking for, the emergency evac
Right,
chairs that
right.
they were looking for? It makes a lot more sense when you go to Pollard saying, explain to me the half-floor thing,
Right.
right?
Yeah, it's-
In the concept of the chair. And that was a budget request that would have come around as they were putting their budget together in September, October. So that's other food for thought. And in June, you know, those schools are getting closed up, and we can say this is what we're looking to do, or this is where the needs are, but you may not be able to see what the best identified needs are, which happen in September. August is not really a good time at all for my office, and the buildings, quite frankly, I'm not so certain that they'd be safe to be going through. They're getting cleaned up. You have desks in hallways. They're waxing floors, and rooms are closed off, and painting is going on.
Well, so, go ahead, Kathy, and then,
Yeah, I was going to say August, but I know that August is really hard for people because we're all on vacation. I do think June would work if it worked for everybody. I don't think we need to, I think people just want to see the buildings and walk around and get a feel for it. So then when they come before us, you have some, you can qualify what they're asking about. I don't think we have to see it in the state of when they're making the request. Again, they're going to come forward, they're gonna have documentation. I mean,
so,
Might get a better attendance.
regardless if, what month we're talking, you're still looking to reach out to all the schools in a short period of time, like, say, 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
I think, this is all dependent on the school board as well, no? I mean, it sounded like these tours are not just for budget committee, they're for both committee and board, right? So it wouldn't just be, even if we all say, yeah, let's do June, the school board might be like, no.
If we bring coffee and donuts, they'll come.
yeah. I think the bottom line is they cannot occur during our regularly scheduled meetings. That is what we, if the school board wants to give up their Thursday and do it, then we can do that. But I don't think we have the luxury of time on our
We don't.
hands. So
Agreed.
I'd like to focus on the budget.
So I'll do this as another note. I'll put this as a note to go speak to the chairperson of the school board. They have some new members to see if they're looking to share a night with us where we can go, because it would make the most sense to visit each school, not forcing that administrator to cater to 2 different groups.
Yes, it has to be efficient for the employees.
Right.
I agree.
BCIP as well, I don't know.
Right. Okay. Did anybody else have any other comments for our budget process? Things they'd like to see done differently, or?
I think one of the things that we, as brought forward, I think by Sean last year, is the revenue side
The
of
revenue
it.
side.
And we don't dig into the expenses. Part of RSA says we're supposed to review periodically the expenses, the expenditures of the school, and so there's stuff that's put out on our the SharePoint. There's vouchers for every month, and there's also the expenditures. We've never discussed them in our meetings.
Right.
That I've been on, so, I think we should start looking at that as part of the process to understand what we're spending on now. And because, we should be doing it just as part of RSA. So we should be reviewing the revenue coming in and the expenditures throughout the year as well, not just during budget season.
So it'd probably be worth it to get that, the revenue sheet on a monthly basis, so we can see how we're progressing along.
Yeah, yep. And so, like, we did the revenue sheet at the, just before voting, and some of the stuff was, we weren't sure where it was gonna be. It'd be interesting to see where the revenue is during the year, but if we're looking at expenditures, I think revenue, we should be looking at both at the same time, just to see where it's coming in. One of the things that's come up in the past, was the full-time K program, whether that revenue from that is actually fully funding it or not. There were questions around it. Getting that information wasn't always straightforward, so I guess from the system, and because things are done throughout at all the schools. So, those types of revenue programs and making sure that we're getting the revenue and what it is, as opposed to the offset of the cost type of thing. Yeah, you remember those discussions we had about
I do.
the full-time.
I do, and I think it's tough because revenue doesn't come from one place.
Right, so, but the expenditures at least we could be looking at, and if we could, and we should be looking at the expenditures. They're up there, I just don't know how many people have actually go in and look at those. And that was some of the expenditures were called out in some of the correspondence as well, so.
Kathy?
I have a quick question. All revenue has to be accounted for, though, where it comes from. So even if it's tuition, the district still has to account that revenue came from tuition, because the taxpayer, you have to.
Tuition's not the issue. Tuition's not the issue, that's the easy part. The rest of it is what level of aid came in to support this particular program, right? When you get all of your equitable aid comes in one lump sum.
But it's based on a calculation of part-time kindergarten, so you would split it across the board. You'd have your portion for all your part-time students, and you'd have to allocate that to those number of students, and then you're getting we receive revenue for part-time of the full-time kindergarten students. That would be the difference. It has to add up. You have X number of students, and you get X amount of aid per each student. It can't
That's
be that
exactly it.
difficult.
We get X amount of aid per student.
Yep.
Kindergarten, part-time, full-time, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, so on. We get equitable aid, we get aid for every student.
Yeah, but you know what you get for part-time kindergarten. We know how many students we have. You can allocate, you can do the math, basically, is what I'm saying, to figure out this came in from tuition, this came in from aid, the rest is at the cost of the taxpayer. It's not difficult.
I take issue with you suggesting that the revenue is the issue. I said the revenue really wasn't the issue. It's where all of the funding comes from that was the larger. It wasn't as easy to ascertain. You can look and say, okay, kindergarten revenue, Danville, X amount.
Okay.
Simple enough. It is the aid that's caught up, and we may get additional aid for certain students in certain circumstances, maybe required to provide education.
So, yeah,
For certain
so
students?
I think we're talking about the students that pay tuition do not get special aid.
Mhm.
So they would be straightforward aid for part-time. Because if they weren't, they would be in special education, they wouldn't be paying tuition. That's a separate matter. I think it's accounting for something that the taxpayer isn't supposed to be paying for. It's supposed to be fully funded. So, and even with the part-time kindergarten that, for the students that do pay tuition, that's supposed to be fully funded via tuition. So, and whatever aid we get. I'm not asking, everything else would be separate and it would be a taxpayer expense by law.
Phil, you had a question?
I'll pass. Yeah.
Pass. Are we good on this topic for now, or?
Is this something we could do before, September? Because I think it's something that the I've never done it. When I was on the budget committee, we've never done it. It sounds like it hasn't been done with anyone on this committee. To be looking at it, maybe like a workshop and work through it just to see what we're looking at, or no? Are we gonna do it separately and bring it up randomly?
So what we saw last year was, we just saw the revenue income. And I think that's really as far as I really want to dig in. I want to see look, we have to come up with like 73 million, 71. So I want to see what's going to be pushed off to assessment and what's coming in from this side. What's coming in from the other side, we have no control over. So I'm not sure. I mean, I trust Jeff that he says, look, if you're getting, this much money from revenue income, so be it. That's it. What can we do? I mean, I can dissect it down to by tuition, by school, but it's not going to get me anywhere. It's still the same number. We can't touch it.
I will say that the big thing this year is, and you mentioned the kindergarten, the additional kindergarten data, I smirked a little bit. You don't know until it's in the bank with the state. They were a little bit nebulous as to whether we'd qualify and what we'd get for it. That's a good analysis. And you know what? This additional aid came in. Good to know.
Which is why I'm saying if we can get those income statements kind of like on a monthly basis,
Yep.
just so we kind of see, are we getting what we've been expecting to be getting, knowing that we're not going to put an excessive assessment on the taxpayers.
So should we say from this point forward, we should at least be meeting once a month to review those as a board,
The income portion?
the expenditures,
Expenditures and revenue.
just so that we're not, because right now our schedule says April 12th, and then we don't come back until September 13th.
Right.
There's months of
Nothing.
expenditures in there that we don't, that nobody's ever gonna look at.
Right.
If we don't, 'cause we're not gonna just jump and say, all right, let's go over the, So are there expenditures through this after June as well, into August, July and August as well, that so we would have from April 12th, whatever we saw there, until September, all those months to review all of those expenditures?
Right.
Or should we add extra time in there, and then if we want to do anything else during that, if anybody wants a workshop to look at something, if anybody wants to dig into the budget, the past budgets, to understand it a little better as a group and discuss it, it wouldn't have to be, a full meeting if we didn't need it to. The agenda could be flexible.
Bill?
New kid on the block here. I see the value of, when you're looking at building a future budget, understanding the current budget is instrumental in figuring out how to adequately build it. But what I'm hearing here is a lot of conversation that almost sounds like auditing in real time. I wonder how much of that, getting really down into the weeds, really is helpful in guiding us in building a future budget. Correct. Yeah, I would. If revenue is up or down in certain areas, I feel like that would be valuable to know. But as the new kid in the block, can someone explain to me why really getting down into the minutia of the budget numbers now, what's being spent now, helps us for 2020? Maybe I'm missing something.
So, before you get into it and you're starting to look, so the different departments are gonna come forward with their budgets. We're gonna see what they want for increases or anything.
Yeah.
But you won't see those until that night. So unless you've kind of been looking at the existing budget and knowing where we are and where we're spending things and what's typical, when we start talking about trends and everything, if we're going from now until September, you're not, unless you're doing it on your own, you're not even looking at budgets. And then all of a sudden, we're gonna jump in and start looking at, we're gonna get department budgets and start looking at things. And I think it keeps it fresh in our mind, what's being spent now, and it gives us a good perspective on what they wanna spend in the future.
Fair enough.
I think it's also helpful because I'm sure we're all gonna be looking at it differently. We'll get a feel for each other and understand how you're looking at it. Am I looking at it wrong? I mean, I think it's helpful as a committee to even just once a month until September, well, not in some of the summer months, but, because we want vacations, just to get a feel for each other also, and to be looking at the trends of the spending and to kind of understand it, so when they come in and start asking, you're familiar with what they've been spending money on in the past.
I do see the value of it. I was just sort of wondering that the amount of bandwidth we as a body were wanting to invest in looking at the.
And it really only adds 3 meetings
Meetings, yeah.
extra. May, June, maybe July, you know, as we start
Okay.
getting into the months.
Yeah.
You know, I know the schools are out, you know, people have scheduled vacations and us trying to get, you know, time with administration, that, you know, the SAU's working right through the summer, right, Jeff? But people take time off.
I will tell you, I am dubious, and I would be very, very cautious about expecting anything from finance in July and August.
Okay.
All right, I'm booked with year end, closing the books, getting our auditors in and prepared, and getting the numbers rolled over. July is very, very tricky because the numbers still move around, they still jump around, we're still closing up the year. And the numbers to look at are very difficult. We don't fall on a typical cycle. And certain expenses come in at certain times, certain revenues come in at certain times. We can go in and say, oh geez, we're 2/3 of the year through and we're, only at 40% expenditure here. Well, yeah, except we have this expenditure that we pay at the end of the year. So there is that aspect of being able to look at things in aggregate in the end where you actually get the full picture. And July is tough. The numbers just aren't settled. They're still moving around and
But to your point, I think that's understood, and that's where your input is extremely valuable, because we will look at department budgets and say, how come you're asking for X amount because you only have a couple of months left and you've only spent 50%? And they say, oh, we're sending out a big chunk, we have something coming in next month and we'll be paying that out, and we'll be at 90% at that point. So I think we can grasp that concept and understand that some things don't go out until the end. And that's why we still have X% left in that line item or whatever. So again, your information would be valuable on that, to say, we don't spend that until the last month and then that goes down to 0, or, 90% of it's gone.
You know,
So where does that leave us?
Is this a bylaws change, or are we talking about?
No, I think it's.
Just additional meetings.
Yeah, additional
And
meetings.
I wouldn't do anything until the April meeting, because we're down 4 members.
Well, school board.
School board
Yeah.
and 3 members of the budget committee that aren't here that would be affected by that. So if we were gonna add anything, I would wait until that time, but I think as a board, it'd be good for us to get more than just when we're in crunch time at budget to be looking at the budget.
There's also something to be said for, you could even call it like team building, right?
Yeah, I think.
At April 12th, we'll be like, see you later. And then see you in September. At least if we're seeing each other and working together, then that brings some additional cohesiveness.
I
So.
agree with that.
So we'll discuss this on the 12th when we have the other members here.
Yeah,
Sounds good.
and hopefully we'll have a school board rep at that time.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. We pretty much exhausted budget process for right now. Other business. Here's what I just want to bring up. And I don't think it's going to be a big issue with this board here, but I'm just going to say we'll generally follow Robert's rules as a guide. I like the way everybody is already not stampeding over the next person that's talking. So I'm just going to ask that if somebody's got the floor, let them speak, and let's try and minimize the side conversations and give the attention and the respect to the person who's speaking.
Yeah.
And we'll have good meetings from there.
And these are new microphones, and they will auto, I can already hear my voice
I can
echoing.
Yeah, I was
So
going to
they'll
tell
pick
Dean,
up
we're getting a
anything.
little echo.
It's because it's a big empty room tonight.
Probably.
But these mics will pick up anything, and the people at home that are listening will hear the side conversations over on top of it. Listening at home, it's been difficult to hear sometimes, so.
And Kathy, when our next meeting, we have all those delegations of individuals, it'll absorb some of the sound.
So you do have the little button in front. You push where it says push, you'll see the green. And now I'm gonna drive Dean crazy because I'm gonna do this.
We'll need special training on that. I haven't picked up that
What keeps
training.
Dean up at night?
Only while
People
they're-
playing with the microphone.
Jeff hitting the button.
You have to hold it.
Okay, does anybody else have any stuff for other business?
I just have one more question. Wi-Fi password, we usually receive that so we can log on to our
So,
computers.
Why don't we
so-
do this? Go find Jeff after the meeting, and he'll get everybody their login password for the Wi-Fi and access to the,
Isn't it the same for everybody? Can't you just
No,
email
we
it?
have
Or-
two different logins. I will check on the Wi-Fi access. I
I
think.
found an open one, unless I'm logging onto someone's cell phone.
there is one that, we have a Wi-Fi access. And then Jeff can set everybody up to make sure that they have a login and password to reach SharePoint.
Oh, I'm all set with that.
I'm all set with
Yeah.
that as
Yeah.
well, I think.
Yeah, the wireless is open here.
Well, we might have sat when you first came in and made sure.
Yeah.
Okay, are we good on that?
Yes.
Okay. So no other stuff? If not, I'm gonna go to your last sheet, which is future meeting dates. Already looking to change one of them.
December 27th?
Thank you. December 27th might not be a good date for some people. So,
Ah, humbug.
So, Mr. Chairman, that is set up pursuant to the bylaws, set up for exactly that reason, to take a look at. There's another very dangerous one in there. It's February 14th should it happen, I think, so.
which one?
I think the second, February.
Valentine's Day.
February 14th?
Yeah, technically the second Thursday is February 14th, but we usually have our meetings either, deliberative around that time.
February 14th sounds familiar. What goes on that day?
Ask your wife.
We usually don't have anything at that time. We were usually tied up with the other meetings, so. But this is a good exercise because
It was in the packet.
So here's what we'll do. We can take no action on this right now. We can wait for the 4 other board members that we're missing. And when they're here, we can discuss possibly adding meetings, as we discussed through maybe the summer, and make an adjustment for other dates that they see in conflict. That sound fair? Fair,
it's out here.
fair for you? Fair on this side? Yep. So we can digest this calendar at home, and we'll discuss it again next time. I just want to talk a little bit about what is coming up for our April 12th. What's one of our big topics there?
Typically, it hasn't really been a huge
So,
meeting.
Then what I'm thinking, April 12th is going to be a continuation of a lot of things that we've tabled tonight. So,
I think that's been the point. I think it's been the point that if there is a break for summer, that you have those discussions now, you have time to think about it and come back and I sent the bylaw changes, which is why you have these binders and not these. If
Hey,
you make
you
a
can-
bylaw change, you can't do anything with this.
Yeah.
Gotta toss it.
So I'm giving it to you. Okay, so our next meeting is April 12th. If anybody has topics that they want to see come to the agenda, bring them forward. We'll see if they work for everybody else, and we'll put them on the agenda. And then I'm going to assume that we're not going to wait until September 13th, because we'll have additional meetings before that. So, if nobody has any other business, I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Any other business? No?
Nope.
So I'm going to adjourn this meeting at 8:58. Thank you, everybody, and have a great night.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you, Dean.